where we struggle in connection with other people, we're also going to struggle in connection with God.
The enemy wants us to run from connection. He wants us isolated, alone, and miserable. And God wants us healed, connected, and whole. Welcome back to Fasting Food Faith. I'm Brianne Sims, RN, and I am finally joined once again by my good friends Chelsea and Teresa. And we are continuing in this study of shame. The name of the book is The Soul of Shame. And if you've been listening, we recorded the first episode and then went through the first chapter. And then we've had a long break. Longer than we intended. Actually, we intended no break. But things got a little sideways on us there for a little while with being sick and going through some hard things and God working some things out in our lives.
Yes.
And so we've spent a lot of time praying and fasting over the last month or two and dealing with,
Shame.
you'll never guess. Yeah.
We had no idea what we were opening up when we decided to do this study.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of knew, but we didn't know, you know?
It's been interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know, is there anything you want to catch anyone up on from the last, well, almost 2 months, I guess.
Yeah. Well, the 21-day fast that we all started on, I don't
Yeah.
think any of us completed. You got
Oh.
sick. I got sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
Well,
was kind of,
it got derailed.
yes.
The food part of it. Anyway,
Yes.
he was and still is, and I think I remember mentioning this the last time that he was having me fast from a mindset, like a wrong mindset of doubting my ability to do the things that he's created me to do. And so I've still been fasting from those thoughts in particular, which
Mm-hmm.
obviously driven by shame and a lot of other things. But that's sort of been the focus, is that he's been revealing more of our true identity by removing some of the shame that we've each been dealing with. And so the fast has really been more focused on that than food in particular, which is interesting because sometimes that's the way God works, especially if we get sick in the middle of a fast. God can still work.
I guess, what did we see God do in the last 2 months? Uh,
Work through a lot of pain and the shame
yeah. I think we've all,
in each of our areas. Yeah.
yeah, some serious times of praying together and doing some prayer counseling together and taking Jesus into things and uprooting some lies and deceptions and replacing it with truth and having Jesus come in and heal our hearts and
Exactly.
give us some new identities.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like that is the biggest piece, right? Because shame says that there is something wrong with me. And God says, no, I created you perfectly the way that you are. And this is your true identity and your true value in me. And so he completely flips the script on that,
Mm-hmm.
right? On the lies that we're believing in about ourselves because of the shame that we've been embracing,
Yeah.
really. And a lot of that has to do with wounds and the way that the enemy is sort of put those pathways in our lives, in our minds, like where it began in our hearts and stuff, and how the enemy has continued to reinforce that
Right.
over our lives. And then God came in and said, no, here's what's really true. And now we're trying to walk that out and make new pathways in our brains with the truth.
Correct.
And walking in that. And I feel like that is what chapter 2 talks about.
Yeah.
Exactly what it talks about.
Or how it targets the mind.
Yeah, how shame targets the mind.
Yeah. How about we just read that summary? Yeah, it's just really good. Yeah, it is really good. Okay, this chapter is exploring how shame operates at the level of the mind, shaping perception, memory, and attention. Shame narrows awareness, causing individuals to fixate on perceived flaws or lies or wrong identities, while ignoring evidence of goodness, growth, or connection. It influences how memories are stored and recalled, often reinforcing negative self beliefs through selective attention. Yeah, we tend to focus on only those situations that are true according to the false identity that we received.
The false narrative, yeah.
hmm Shame also disrupts curiosity and creativity by triggering fear based thinking patterns. The mind under shame becomes rigid, defensive, self protective, limiting emotional flexibility and relational openness. By understanding how shame affects cognitive processes, readers gain clarity about why insight alone is often insufficient for healing. Awareness of these mental patterns creates space for gentler, more intentional responses to internal narratives.
So he's talking about how basically shame affects the brain, and then we develop these patterns, and then pretty soon that's all we can see is the negative patterns of how we view ourselves, and we keep circling in that spiral of shame, basically. And we were just talking before we got on today about, circumstances and being able to see that when people shut down and push you away,
Right.
it's not always about you. It's because of the shame, the self-condemnation that they are feeling, and so they immediately shut down that self-protection, like I was saying, limiting emotional flexibility and relational openness. And we see that so much within a marriage relationship, right? Think everything is going along perfectly. One of you hits another person's button that triggers their shame, and what happens?
They shut down,
They shut down completely
pull away.
and pull away. They're going into that self-protective response because they're feeling shame in whatever that area is. They're feeling wrong, and therefore they have to shut down and protect themselves so that they're not further hurt, and they're worried about hurting someone else. Sometimes it could be either way, but it limits emotional flexibility and relational openness. And so when it feels like your partner or even your friend or anyone,
Members.
family members
Yeah.
are feeling distant and they're pushing you away, it might not be it about you.
Made us more aware, though, of how much that happens
Right.
with any of our relationships. When you see that in another person, you're like, where did that even come from? Like, why are they feeling that way? Or how did I trigger that? And it wasn't anything you did. It was their own shame. Or seen that even in ourselves. It was our own shame that made us get triggered.
Right. And retreat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially emotionally. Like that's like the big red flag.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, and our first question in our review talks about what kinds of thoughts tend to dominate your mind when you feel exposed or inadequate. So that's definitely one of those triggers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe we can share some of the thoughts that trigger us to start spiraling into shame. For myself, it's thoughts about just giving up. You can't do this. You're going to be a failure. Everyone's going to see you're a fraud. And then that turns into you are a failure. And that's what shame says. Shame says you are something.
I think a big one in my life in particular, the negative thoughts is not enough.
Mm.
And I think that's
We
pretty
all-
universal as
Yeah.
well as yours. Thoughts also are just like not being enough for whatever the next thing is,
Mm.
whether it's something that God's having me do, not being enough for a certain person in whatever relationship that looks like, but just not enough in general. And therefore, I need to hide myself because I'm just not going to be enough. And they're going to then reject and then continue that shame spiral.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same. The whole wanting to hide thing. But I guess the only one that hasn't been said already was more my thoughts of I'm not okay,
Mm. Yep.
because I'm so different.
That is
So
key
therefore,
too.
I want to hide because I come into that alignment with not being okay or what they say about me.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to hide.
And so, what did we do to remedy some of this? We asked Jesus to take us back to where did this start?
Yep.
Because there's a memory at some point in your life where this has all started. And so that's our next question actually is how do your memories of past experiences change when you view them through a lens of shame?
Yeah, I think it's pretty eye-opening once the Holy Spirit like works in your heart and mind, you're beginning to understand how shame operates. Then you start to look back and recognize, oh, I responded that way in that situation because I felt shamed. Shamed, cultural pressures, family pressures. They're sort of like, I don't know, I guess you call them shame pressures, really. And I think he talked about that. Was it in this chapter or the next one about how like shame actually is good in that
We act appropriately.
like we act appropriately. Like there's like in community there is side shame like and keeps people from doing crazy things, right? Like there is some like we're not going to take her clothes up at the dinner table. Like
Right.
there is some semblance of like order, I guess,
Yeah.
in like, hey, that's not okay behavior versus, hey, you're not okay. Like
Yes.
there's a difference there. And I think that's kind of the point that he was making is just like sometimes those external pressures are like in a good way,
Right.
balancing good.
Right.
But the problem is that the enemy always takes it 10 steps further and is just like, you're not okay.
And the problem is that usually when you go back and ask Jesus take you back to memory, it's usually when you're very young,
Mm-hmm.
when you're not able to interpret situations appropriately anyway.
Right.
And so as a young child, you interpret body language or you interpret someone's anger, even though it's not directed at you. You can be in the same room as a conversation and because of the wiring in your brain. And what we've also noticed is this is generational too. Like mindsets and patterns of thinking are generational. And that can also be broken off generationally to change that thinking and that wiring. Just the interpretation of others' body languages can cause you to have the wrong perception of yourself, of other people in a situation, of God, and then you begin all of these negative thoughts and all of these negative patterns in your mind and your thinking, which are lies, which is exactly what the enemy is trying to accomplish. And I just think it's interesting how he was talking about how then we tend to perceive a lot of negative situation like we're drawn to anywhere that those negative things happen the rest of our life and it reinforces that.
That
Well,
pattern.
yes, the Bible calls that a stronghold.
Yeah.
So we develop strongholds in our thinking that have to be torn down,
Yes.
by taking every thought captive, which is why we're asking Jesus to show us what are all the thoughts I even established there in that stronghold in the first place. And just simply renouncing them, breaking agreement with them, taking back ground the enemy gave, commanding the enemy to get out of there, and asking Jesus to replace and restore with the truth.
Yeah.
And then for us from then on to reinforce that so that our minds are transformed by truth.
Yes, exactly, which is exactly what the Bible talks about.
Mhm.
Transformed by the renewal of your mind.
Mhm.
The truth.
Which is how, in the next question, shame influences your ability to be curious, playful, creative, things that come with feeling joy, with
Mm-hmm.
knowing the truth.
Exactly.
Shame just completely shuts that down.
Yeah,
Oh,
this connects us from who God created us to be. We start to
yeah.
lose that and we don't see that because all we have is shame and false identity.
Right. And then that hinders our connection with others because we can't have that joyful connection with Him.
And with God, if it's going to hinder our connection with others, it's always going to hinder,
Our relationship with God.
Yeah. Yeah. He was saying in there somewhere that the same brain that you're relating with other people about is the same brain God gets. So where we struggle in connection with other people, we're also going to struggle in connection with God
Hmm.
and how much we're willing to let God in. So if you have walls with people, start thinking about what those walls look like with God. Also,
Yeah.
if you're frustrated in your relationship with God,
Mm-hmm.
look at your relationships with people. It might give you some ideas to figure out what it is you're struggling with.
Exactly. What is the barrier to that connection with your heart and God's heart for you? Which leads us into the next question. How do you typically respond mentally when you feel criticized or misunderstood?
Feeling not seen, not cared for, not understood. Something's wrong with me.
Like you lose your value too.
Yes, or you believe I'm the problem.
Yeah.
Which is another lie. Yeah.
The enemy is really good about making us self-focused. Yeah, is
Yeah.
what I'm thinking here too. Like shame really causes you to turn internal and self-focus, self-condemnation, self-protection. It all becomes about self, which what is the answer to shame? Community, like getting outside of yourself. So that's an interesting.
It even uses that in my next question. Yet patterns of self-talk.
Ah,
What patterns of
Mm.
self talk feel automatic or difficult to interrupt?
Just everything we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's all self instead of what God says. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
And it always ends too with the why bother? They're never gonna understand, they're never gonna see, they're never gonna accept.
Or I'm
They're
never
never
gonna get
yeah,
better.
I'm never gonna get anywhere, so
Right.
why bother?
It's the idea of accepting the lie as your fate forever.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no way out of that circle of negativity, which is obviously what the enemy wants you to believe.
Which is not what Jesus says at all.
No.
Exactly.
And I think that's the beautiful part of this prayer counseling model that we've learned to do is when Jesus comes and replaces the lies with the truth, oftentimes he shows you pictures, of what he says about you and what he thinks. And those are transforming things that which is why I think he gives pictures or phrases or words is because he wants the work that he did with you to transform how you feel about yourself and how you think in situations.
Right.
And the more times you do that and the more times you see who God really created you to be, it's that renewing of your mind, the transforming of your thinking, and it becomes reality and it becomes God's truth.
Yes, and it becomes a joyful connection
Yes.
because he wants to purify that connection with you and have that close connection, that intimate relationship with you. And so if he can remove the lies and get you to believe the truth, means that he is going to have a more intimate relationship with you, which is exactly what he wants.
Right. And seeing him care for you, like those are oftentimes some of the other pictures that we get is him sitting next to us or holding or, caring for your wounds or wiping away your tears. Well, that's also this guy, Kurt talks about community being such a part of learning how to have connected relationships because that's going to rewire your brain. Well, Jesus can do that also. So if you can have Jesus helping you to see the truth and see him truly caring for you, like this counseling approach brings the Bible to life
Mhm.
in ways that sometimes we kind of forget that the Bible is so real and how Jesus related with people. And so getting to see Jesus do that in your own life is going to rewire the connections and then having community with others where that's happening. It's a win.
So the last one, how might increased awareness of your thinking help you respond differently to shame? Which is basically what this whole chapter is all about. Being aware of how shame affects your brain and these negative patterns. And once you're aware of that, God can help you identify those and deal with them.
Right.
Which is what we've been
What we've been doing.
been
Yes.
going through the last several
Yeah.
weeks. Yeah. So it's been a lot, but it's been amazing. Recognizing that there is a problem is the first step.
Mhm. Mhm. I was looking at one of his application exercises. He said, choose a memory often associated with shame and rewrite it using neutral, factual languages. Guys, that's what we've been doing the last few weeks. Like every time we do this prayer counseling approach, Jesus is literally coming into the situation and rewriting it for us and showing us the truth. That's exactly what he said to do here. So that's fun. We didn't even read the application exercise. We didn't.
But Jesus is rewriting our brains. He knows what to do.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right.
I liked this. I think you found this definition of shame somewhere.
Oh,
That's really hit home and felt very accurate.
when you deal with shame or recognize shame or feel shame, you're literally stripped bare and before whoever, and you're being judged. And that's how it feels in your core is that I have been
Exposed.
exposed entirely and now I am being judged. It always is in the wrong way.
Right. Exactly. Because that's what so many people say. Well, I don't want to go there or be around those people because I feel judged. And they're really saying, I don't like to be around those people because it pushes my shame buttons.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And so like ding ding ding, there's a clue. Like, what am I feeling shame about? What is the enemy trying to make me feel lied about? In what specific way? And what way does God want to come in and bring the truth to my heart? So even just the idea, like, I don't like being around those people because I feel naked and ashamed. I feel stripped bare. I feel judged by them.
Mm-hmm.
That's just exposing, like, oh, I feel shame from those people. Why is that?
Mm-hmm.
And that
It probably doesn't even come from those people.
right
It
might not have
originates
anything to
somewhere
do with
else.
them. It's just that they're pushing that button. They're triggering that shame response within you. And so
So uprooting that.
uprooting that, that's a clue. Like, ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
Okay, Jesus.
What's going on here? It's me. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
What's in my heart that I need to come
Right.
care for
Exactly.
and remove and replace? Yeah. So that this doesn't keep getting triggered.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, we'd be able to connect with a lot more people, right? If
Right.
we didn't have so much shame.
Yes, if we were running from people or certain situations or circumstances or whatever, the enemy wants us to run from connection. He wants us isolated, alone, and miserable. And God wants us healed, connected, and whole.
Right.
It's such
A shift and so
such
opposite.
different. Yes, so different. Yeah, so opposite. So
Yeah. So the challenge this week, ask Jesus about where shame is in your life and where did it come from? And what are the lies that you began to believe about yourself? And what's the false identity that you've received? And maybe ask Jesus what the truth is and what's the new identity he wants you to have and replace that with so that you can be blessed and you can enjoy life and have joy.
be free and have those connections that he wants you to have with him and with others.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for being here this week. I know that was a lot. We're going to dive into even more in the next chapter. Well, in all of the chapters.
Yeah.
Really. And it'll be interesting to see the next thing that he walks us through as we continue through this. But thank you so much for being here with us, for joining us. If this helped you in any way, we would love it if you shared it with some family or friends that you want to walk through this with you.
Go fast and be blessed.